Well, I'm born and raised in Leicester. I'm the youngest of five. My parents are ministers, Pastor Melvin Dixon and Melita Dixon. They had their own church, and what basically that allowed me to do is learn musical instruments and vocals at a very young age. A lot of children nowadays have Xboxes and internet and PlayStations, but my upbringing was pretty much music. That's why I learned how to play the drums, keyboards, guitars, bass guitar and organs, because we all had instruments pretty much laying around the house through the church environment. Moving on from that, we started a group called the Dixons that was very instrumental in Leicester, where we started, and then it went through the Midlands, West Midlands, East Midlands, and then it went national, just singing in gospel concerts, gospel conventions and so forth. That went on for a number of years. It was my brother Shenton playing the bass guitar, my sister Dulcie playing the organ and the keyboards, and my two sisters Sonia and Judith, they was up front doing the vocals, and myself was drumming and singing at the time. So what basically happened from then, after a while you get known, you get quite popular doing singing in Leicester. After a while you get known for singing in Leicester. So what basically happened from then, I got asked to join a group called Formation 5. Which consists of myself and Leroy Small, Brian Luby, Lube Lover, Idris, and what we did, we was a group way ahead of its time. We was like the N-Dubs or the Fugees, but 20 years before. There was a singer, there was an MC, there was a DJ. It was very instrumental around Leicester doing events, doing recording. I remember in the late 80s we went to the Pet Shop Boys studio, which is a very big studio at the time. Yeah, we went to the Pet Shop Boys studio, which is one of the biggest artists in the 80s, and we recorded a song called Five Kicking Live, which I still have today. Following on from that, at the same time as I was in Formation 5, I was also in a group called After Dark. I was about 16 at this time, and After Dark was another live band that was pretty much the last live band in Leicester for black musicians, because people have gravitated to being DJs and MCs at present. So that After Dark was the last R&B band, to my knowledge, in Leicester. We had a fair bit of success, did quite a lot of travelling. We went to record in Morgan Khan's studio. You have to remember, those days, it's not like nowadays where you got recording studios in every school. We had to go to London to record because Leicester didn't have the facilities for us. So basically myself, I don't really pigeonhole myself to say I'm an R&B singer or a reggae singer. In those days, you almost had to take a pick, take a choice, make a choice if you were a reggae guy or an R&B guy, which I had a problem with because I'm Jamaican. I love Jamaican music, I love reggae music, but my influences were American. Those days there was no UK artist to say, yeah, that's my influence. So my influence was a gospel group called the Winans, a gospel group called Commissions, the Hawkins family, and Andre Crouch. That's where I got my vocal influence from. Following on from that, as you get more popular in Leicester, I used to sing on sound systems like Junior Blues' sound system. We actually won the Junior Blues Cup Clash. We actually won the Sound Clash, Leicester Sound Clash with Junior Blues, me and a guy called Chemist. That was in 1991. Got the video for that, just cut that. So my first record I ever recorded was on the Formation label called Like a Bird in 1993. And then we did Getting Busy Part 1 and Get Busy Part 2. That was my first time I actually released a record. Following on from Getting Busy Part 1 and 2, I went to America to live for a while, and that's where I did a lot of songwriting, improving my craft. Following on from that, we went to London with a group called Rampage, one of the big DJs in the UK. I left Leicester recording with Rampage. I've got quite a few demos. We did a British Knights advert. And then in 1993, I released a song called Ain't No Doubt on Groove and a Quarter record label from Harlesden. It's a slow ballad song, but now I had the tools to kind of start performing myself as an artist. So that allowed me to go on a tour in 1993, I think it was, with Keith Sweat, Brandy, Horace Brown, Silk, and Cut Close. That was a 5-date tour. That was a very, very good experience for me, a young guy travelling, first time on my road as an artist. Following on from releasing Ain't No Doubt, that allowed me to have the material to start promoting myself as an artist. So I remember back in the days rehearsing and performing in Spectrum, Asquith's, Brannigan's, all the big clubs that was around at the time. In 1995-96, I joined the first R&B group that was signed to a record label, major record label in the UK called Rhythm and Bass. That again allowed me to travel America, travel to the States, and meet people like Teddy Riley. It's a funny story how we met Teddy Riley. We was rehearsing in a hotel, and one of the girls that knows one of the guys from the group was speaking to Teddy Riley on the phone. And everybody knows Teddy Riley is from Blackstreet, the biggest group around in the 90s. So what happened, he said, who's them guys singing in the background? He said, oh, it's my friends from England. He flew us over to his studio in Virginia, which is called Future Records. We did a showcase for Teddy Riley, but he wanted us to wait for 18 months, and we didn't really want to wait that long. But while I was there, we saw people like Big Bob, we met Mary J. Blige, which was a very humbling experience again, because as we know, she's a very big singer and she's still active today. So we came back, the group went our separate ways, still in touch with the guys. One of the guys is one of the UK's biggest songwriter now, Wayne Hector. The other guy, Ali Tennant, Lorne Tennant, he is the X Factor singing coach, vocal coach, and the Voice singing coach, vocal coach. So again, these guys have done very well for themselves. So about 1997, I signed my biggest contract to date with EMI Records, released a song called Bizzi's Party, went to the States 1996-97 to record my album. I never forget, my son was 10 days old and I had to go to America to record for 3 weeks. And it was something that I worked for all my life for, but it almost like bittersweet because my first child was born, but I had to go to America. I remember sitting in the hotel thinking, what am I doing here? As much as I really wanted to record my album, I wanted to just be home and see my son. So then I took a couple of years out of the business, licking my wounds, because it was a very humbling experience. Obviously being flown here, flown there, going to the Mobos, rubbing shoulders with all the stars and so forth, and then getting released from a record label. It is very humbling. But I did well out of it, and the song that I released is still very popular today. I'm still very active, singing around Europe and all over the place, singing Bizzi's Party. Following on from then, because of the strength of Bizzi's Party when it was first released, it was still popular on the underground scene. So I released it again with a record label called Red Rose, which was at the time, who was on there? It was MC Luck and Neat was on there. And we did got a few TV appearances, which is a very good experience again. My first release was in 1993, but a couple months ago I linked up again with the guys from Formation, and we just went on a world tour that went to Canada, Puerto Rico and America, which is a fantastic experience because again I don't really pigeonhole myself and call myself a R&B artist. I sing everything from house to reggae to R&B, to drum and bass, to gospel, country and western. I'll sing anything. I believe God has given me a gift and I will always continue to sing.
What? You when you set up the Dixons?
Yes.
Yeah, was that?
Bloody hell, that was about 1980.
1980?
Yeah. My parents set up the Dixons when I was about 7, 8 years old. That's when it was officially set up because we was playing in the church on a weekly basis. But after a while, you get good at your craft, the harmonies get tight, the production gets tight, and as musicians we're growing. So that's basically launched us as a family group.
So when your parents set it up, would you say that was the first choir or gospel group, or were there a few others out there that were setting up as well? Or?
When we started off as the Dixons officially, back in the days, we're talking late 70s, early 80s, it was almost considered worldly to be singing gospel music out of the church settings. So what we did then, we was kind of ahead of our time because a lot of the Christians were saying, no, gospel music's only for church people. And then we was the first to start putting it into places like the Leicester Carnival. Back in the days, we used to perform at places like the Leicester Polytechnic.
Yeah. So you guys, as the kids, took it out of the church?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Did you get a little bit of that? What are you doing?
Yes, a lot of the old school. Even now, you get the tradition. Even now, you get the traditionalists saying, "You're not supposed to do that." You get gospel music, I've always believed gospel music is about the word, the message. Now you hear drum and bass gospel, you hear reggae gospel, you hear hip hop, drum and bass and all sorts, but those days that was a no-no.
And would you say that, I mean, that was original music? So you would make your own lyrics, you would sit down and write your own lyrics and...
No, what we're doing again, because it was remember we are the first generation of black British in the UK. So our influences, we couldn't look up to say there's another generation doing gospel music, because there wasn't. Our influences were predominantly American, so we're singing American songs. For me as a kid, I thought it was normal to be musical. Remembering that's all I knew. My parents are ministers, and back in the days when your parents are ministers, there's no playing about. It wasn't like nowadays where the parents are very liberal. Oh, Johnny doesn't want to do this today. Okay, Johnny doesn't have to do it. Wrong. I had church 7 days of my life. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I didn't really know any different. And we used to travel up and down the country, going to Manchester one day, going to London the next, and we just used to sing. Again, there was no CD or tape recorder in the car. It was just voices. We used to sing choruses and just practice our harmonies, practice our craft. And
that obviously started to, and that's where, because that's where your musicianship came from.
That's correct. And it's no secret that the highest paid session musicians, backing vocalists, are from gospel. Whether they are playing for Beyonce, whether they're playing for the Sugar Babes, whether they're playing for JLS. If you do your homework on those musicians, they're all ex-gospel musicians.
So when you guys set up the Dixons and you started doing things outside the church,
yes,
there must have been other people in Leicester who not exactly said, hey, look, those guys are doing it, let's do it, whatever, because people inspire other people. And
that's correct.
So there must have been other groups that are popping up as well then.
That's correct. There was a couple of groups that was popping up at the time, and at the time, after, in about early 80s, there was the Leicester combined choir that was formed. And I remember singing in that choir and being the only male. Because again, from my perspective, it was almost seen as being a bit sissy if you're a singer. Guys wanted to play football, but my passion has always been music. From day one, I've always wanted to sing, I always wanted to play musical instruments.
And then, so as you were growing older, did you do the whole school thing, college, all that, or did you?
I left school at the age of 16. I remember yawning through my exams. I probably shouldn't say this because I had a session the night before. My passion was music, and if I'm being honest, I did not focus as much as I should academically because my passion was music. It's like a footballer. If you're a gifted footballer, some of them won't. If you speak to a lot of these footballers, and some of them if you speak to a lot of footballers, for instance, you'll find that a lot of them are not very intelligent because they have a gift. They've relied on that gift to provide. I believe it's gift or nurture. I believe my voice is a gift from God. That's why I've always pursued vocals. Vocals is my passion. Teaching it, recording it, writing. Vocals is my passion.
Did Leicester have the platform for you to grow in, or did you have to go outside? Did you have to leave Leicester to do different things?
If you remember when I first started recording in Leicester, there was not a recording studio. And to think that Leicester is one of the major cities in the UK without a recording studio that wasn't accessible to individuals like myself or bands like myself, that's why everybody that has been signed to any record label up to date had to leave Leicester.
So that was probably one of the main reasons.
Yes. You have myself, you have Mark Morrison, you have John Barrett, you have Carol Leeming, all these individuals. Remember, Leicester has no recording, Leicester has no major management, Leicester has no major record label, Leicester has no major auditoriums in terms of the venues. So it's all down south, which is a shame.
So, but you did have venues like this, and obviously Spectrum. Were you involved with these, with the movement for that?
Most definitely, I performed in pretty much. After a while, Leicester's a very small place musically, and without being big-headed, you can be a big fish in a small pond. So once you've performed at the Abbey Park Show, the Montfort Hall, Caribbean Centre, the People Centres, all these other venues, there's not much more you can do here. Not saying that I've outgrown Leicester. Leicester will always be my home. Leicester's my base and will always be my base. But in terms of following your dreams and your career, there's only so much you can do here. Then you have to fly the nest.
So So you say 93 was your first single?
Yes.
What, and on record?
Record. Yeah, those days was no CDs, it was straight up record, it was vinyl.
And how far and wide was that distributed?
Again, that was on the Formation Empire, which was a very big drum and bass label, and it went worldwide. So again, we was way ahead of our time. Releasing drum and bass songs with vocals on in 20 years ago. Nobody was doing that.
So you were singing over drum and bass?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and you've always sang? You've no MC or anything like that? It's always been singing for you?
Back in the days, as a Jamaican young guy, I used to MC, used to chat on some of the sound systems, but again, vocals has always been my passion. I've always done vocals.
So that was one of the main sort of things, the platforms that say, yes, okay.
That's correct.
Here's a new world for me now.
That's correct.
And, wow, I can do this now.
Because again, I didn't realise until a later date. Again, there's no artist development, there's no guidance. So I understand now that an artist goes in cycles, 3 cycles. You're either writing, and then once you start writing, you record. And once you've recorded, you start promoting. And there's a lot of artists, even now, name the biggest artists you can think of. You might think they've gone quiet, but they might be writing. Or they might be going on a world tour. It's a cycle. And you do one, and you just keep going round and round and round and round.
Who was your influence to say, right, this is your next thing, this is what you want to do next?
Okay, again, my influence was my brother, Shenton Dixon. He was a lot older than me. He used to sing groups like Saquii and so forth, and then he left Leicester about 1988. And so what I had to do when I left Leicester was get management. And I had quite a few managers. One management was Martin Elliott, which is Maxi Priest's brother. That's why I met Maxi Priest at a very young age and did some recording on Saxon's sound system and quite a few dub plates with Maxi Priest. Again, I had another guy called Erskine Thompson, rest in peace. He used to manage people like Loose Ends and Soul to Soul and so forth. And the person that got me signed to EMI, he was very influential at the time, called Errol Henry. So again, I wouldn't have met these people or got in the position I got if I stayed in Leicester, because these people are not coming Leicester.
Influence that you might have had on other people, younger generation?
It's strange because it's weird. When I was young, I used to move with people a lot older than me. And my inspiration, I remember being a young kid, going to rehearsals with Saquii. I must have been about 8, 9 years old. And seeing them, how they put the sound together, how they wrote songs, how they rehearsed, and then seeing the rehearsals come to light on a gig, I'm like, wow, that's what I want to do. And as a young kid, you either want to do what dad wants to do. As a young kid, you either do what dad wants to do or you look up to somebody else. It might be a drugs man, it might be a bad man, it might be a footballer. Mine was my brother, who's into music, fortunately. So I'm watching my brother and I gravitated to his path.